Hello, I'm Rebecca Flaherty, and today we're going to be finishing up our current beginner series we're working on, and we're going to be making this cute and cozy coffee pattern in Procreate. If you're a regular here and you've seen the intro to all of these before, feel free to use the timestamps to skip to the beginning of the tutorial. And if you're new here, then welcome to the Pattern Maker's Toolkit. You can get the free stamp brush set that has all the motifs to make this pattern, all these brushes here, over on my website. And I'm going to be showing you how to use the Pattern Maker canvas from my Etsy store to make patterns in Procreate using the diamond method. It's super easy and super fun. It's going to speed up your workflow because sketching out and finalising the layout of the pattern first before you draw any motifs means that when you come to illustrate motifs, you're only drawing the exact ones you need and you can draw them to fit their exact spot in the pattern. Traditionally, we tend to work the other way around when designing patterns, where we draw a bunch of motifs first and then try to piece them together like a jigsaw puzzle. But the problem with working that way in Procreate is that every time you rotate or scale a motif, the image quality deteriorates a little bit. So by doing it this way, you keep your image quality perfect. You also get to preserve all the layers, so you can always easily go back and make edits to the colours at a later date. And it's also an especially good way to make patterns if you want to sell or license them, because you can export all these layers to something like Affinity Photo or Photoshop and be able to hand over a fully editable layered pattern to your buyer. That's the workflow I use for all the patterns I make for commercial use, and that is why I love using the diamond method for making patterns in Procreate, and why I first created these canvas for myself to speed up my design process with all the layers set up, including the beautiful texture overlays. So let's get started and I will explain everything as we go along. So to bring in a PSD file, you always need to import it from the gallery screen. It can be within a stack like this or from the main gallery screen here. So we're going to go to import and bring it in this way. If you try and drag and drop it from the Files app, it's going to flatten all those layers in the PSD into just one layer. So you always need to bring in PSD files by going to import and then bringing it in like this. So this is our canvas. It's got all the layers here that you'll need. It's got your overlay textures on the top, some background textures on the bottom, and in the middle here we've got our layers group, we've got our extra folder, our pattern folder, and our sketch folder, which is where we're going to start working. So we're going to start in the draw here first layer. Just grab my pencil and let's find the coffee brushes from the set. There we go, tea and coffee, and I'm going to stamp one of these onto separate layers. So let's stamp all these out now. So the size I have for this one is 30%. If you want to use the same sizes that I have, so then I'm going to add a layer, stamp another one, add another layer, and I'm just going to stamp these out on separate layers. The coffee beans I'm going to add in later because these are set up to kind of rotate randomly as I stamp them out, so it's easier to just tap those on once everything else is in place. So I'm going to spread these around the canvas and duplicate these, and it's okay because this is our sketch layer, these aren't going to be our final motifs. We're going to trace over them so the line work will be perfect and won't go fuzzy where we're moving them around. The sketch layer is the perfect place to transform and resize things. So I'm going to lay these out now inside this diamond shape. I'm going to turn snapping and magnetics off for this. And with the size these are, this should allow for 2 of each of these motifs, so we can duplicate them and flip them so that we have another instance of it in a slightly different angle, or flip the other way, and that helps to make a more seamless, smooth pattern if you've got duplicates of the same motif. And then we're going to pinch all of these together, pinch them down with the sketch diamond. I can turn off the spare diamond, and then we're going to spread these around the canvas to see how they fill in these gaps around the edge. So we're going to duplicate this layer, tap transform, we're going to put snapping and magnetics back on, and I'm going to drag this down into the corner, and you want to see orange lines intersecting there, and then you know it's snapped exactly into that corner. You'll also be able to check by looking at these crosshairs here. They will match up exactly. If this one was slightly off, just turn snapping off, you'd be seeing things like that if it wasn't quite in place properly. So then we come back down to the bottom one here, duplicate that. We'll put snapping back on and snap it up into this top corner there. And already I can see that I'm going to have to move this one down a little bit, but we'll get all of these in place and then we can shift things around. So I'm just duplicating this bottom one all the time and then snapping it into the corners. Then the top 4 we can pinch together, and I'm going to invert the colours on that, and then we can see which ones are the middle motifs that we're working with and which ones are the duplicates. So on this layer with the orangey motifs on there, I can now shuffle these things around. So I'm going to bring this mocha pot down a little bit. And it's okay if you've cut little bits of the diamond out, as long as you have still got it going all the way to the edges. Don't cut the corner bits, but as long as it's just edge pieces, that's okay. So we can put that one there, and I might just move this teapot down a little bit. Then, because we've moved things around, I'm going to delete this top one and put this around the edges again. Pinch those top 4 together, invert the colours. Then we can add our coffee beans and flowers to this. So I'm just going to add some of these coffee beans, and this brush is set to rotate randomly, so you'll get them at nice different angles here. Then I'm going to put some flowers in too, so we'll use this one here. And I don't need to put one there because that will be the same as the one there. And it's probably enough, I think. So we can duplicate this again and just put this around to the edges to make sure that we haven't got like places where the flowers or coffee beans on the edges look too close together, like there for example. Pinch those together, delete that one, and invert the colours on this. And to fix this, all we need to do is just decide, do we want this to be a coffee bean or a flower? And I think probably it's going to look better if it's a coffee bean, because we've already got those 3 flowers there. So I think this will look better if it's coffee beans. So the flower is the one to erase. So we'll just get rid of that on there. And on this one, we could just erase the flower on that one. And then we can leave that as it is. Add the faces to our cups and teapots and things now. So I'm going to use this face brush here and just add one of these. I think I'll just stamp one in each of these. So let's do these first. So I'm going to use the select tool to make this a bit smaller. Turn snapping off. These tea bag ones can be a bit smaller as well. There we go, that's our layout complete, and now we're ready to start tracing over this in the pattern folder. So I'm going to collapse my sketch group, turn on the pattern folder, I can hide this one, and start doing the line work on this layer here. I'm going to use this dark grey to do the mocha pots to start with, and I'm going to use the tracing crayon from my brush set. So on this layer I'm going to have all the silver bits for the mocha pot. I'm going to do the handle and the bit on the lid a different colour, so I'll save those for a separate layer and put those behind it. And we can add a layer, and I'll do the teapots now. So I'm going to use the dark pink for this and do all the line work for this on one layer in pink. Then we can add another layer for the cups. If you're short on layers, you could do these parts on the same layer. As long as it's not got 2 different colours touching each other, you'd still easily be able to recolour by alpha locking it and then scribbling over it with a different colour. I'm just in the habit of doing every different colour on a different layer. Then we could do the flowers next. So I'm going to make these perfect circles. So I'm going to draw, hold, and then tap, and that will snap to a perfect circle. Draw, hold, tap, snap. On this layer with the teapots, we can also do the pink bits for the mocha pots if we drag them underneath there like that. Then we could do the coffee beans in this brown colour. So I'm just going to draw and hold to snap these to ellipses. Then we could do the flowers on another layer underneath, the petals like this. Try and make sure that you end the petals under this and don't go out beyond this one. If you find you've gone under like that, you can fix it by erasing it like that, because we have it on a separate layer. It's going to look neater if you can end everything under there. And then last of all, we've got the tea bags to do. So I think I'll draw those brown for the outline. So I'll do them on the same layer as the coffee beans. And then I'll add a layer underneath, do the string coming out from under there. And the label. So because all our line work is different colours, rather than it just all being one colour, it makes sense to do it on separate layers. But when we want to fill the layers, it's kind of going to be more tricky because we've got different bits on different layers. And for, like the flower petals, for example, I hide those, so we wouldn't be able to fill those because that's not closed. So what we're going to do is group all of this line work together. And then I'm going to duplicate this group, tap flatten on it. I can hide the group and then tap on the group and make it a reference, and then that will use all of this combined line work to do the filling when we use colour drop in a second. So I'm going to add a layer underneath the group with all the separate layers of line work, and then we can do our colour fills now. So I'm going to fill the teapots with the pink. I'm going to make sure I've got the threshold high enough so that it's going all the way past the edges of the line work. Tap continue filling, and then we can just go through and fill all of the pink bits. I'm also going to do the cups on this layer. I'm going to add a layer and fill in the mocha pots now. Then do these labels that colour too. And then we've just got the tea bags to do now, so we'll use this light brown colour for them. Then we can add another layer and do the flower middles. Add another layer and do the daisies. We can make those white. Then last of all, the coffee beans, which we can do on another layer again because they'll be a different colour. We can add some spots to our cups and teapots. So find your layer with cups and teapots on it, add a layer, make it a clipping mask, and then on the colour disc, double tap here to get a 50% grey. I'm going to use the mini dot brush as big as it will go, and I'm going to make the blend mode on this colour dodge, and the opacity will use 50%, and I'm just going to add some little spots over the top of these teapots and the cups there. And that colour dodge blend mode just will lighten what's underneath. And then we just got to add the cute little faces. So let's collapse our pattern group, bring our sketch group up to the top. I'll change the blend mode on the faces to colour burn, and then in our pattern group at the top here we can add a layer. I use this brown colour tracing crayon, and we can just trace over the face details like this. I'm going to fill these in just by colouring them because that's easier than trying to zoom in, and the mouths are big enough that they'll be easy enough to fill. So I'm just going to go and repeat that for all of these now. And the reason that I'm tracing over these rather than just using this stamp as it is I want the line work and the edge on that to match the rest of the line work in this. This is much smoother, and even though I used this brush to make this stamp brush, because the brush is resizing it, you lose that line texture detail on there. So that's why I'm tracing these and redrawing them rather than just using the stamps. When you come to use the colour drop on this, you're going to need to turn your reference layer off. Otherwise, when you try and fill this, it's going to be still using this line work as the reference. So you need to turn that reference layer off, and then you can go ahead and fill these as normal. Then we're ready to do the little face details. So I'm going to grab the light colour and my mini dot brush again, and just add a big dot in there for the eyes, smaller dot there, and then on a separate layer I'm going to add some cute little cheeks in there. And then if we hide the sketch, that's how this is looking. So there we go, that's all of our illustrating done, and now we're ready to build out the pattern tile. So let's collapse our pattern group, turn off our sketch folder, and if you've got enough layers to duplicate this whole group, you can do that and tap flatten. If you don't, you can hide everything except what we want to copy. Swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all, come up to the top here, and then tap paste, and that will do the same as duplicating and flattening. So then we can put all of these back on again, hide our layers group, so we're just working with this flattened one now. Duplicate this around the canvas the same as we did with our sketch. We need to be able to grab the whole canvas. With our sketch, the diamond went all the way to the edges. With this, it's just got the motifs, so we need to add some marks going off the corners now. So one up here diagonally and one down there. Then we can duplicate this, tap transform, turn snapping and magnetics on, and snap this over into the corner there. Looking out for those orange lines. This is for our final tile, so things need to be in the exact position. If you're having trouble snapping, make sure you've got everything except this and your textures turned off. So make sure these layers are all turned off. Otherwise it will try and snap to things on other layers. So we're just going to duplicate and snap this into each of the corners. Then you can merge the top 4 together, erase these marks, and then the ones on the bottom. Then you can pinch to merge those 2 together, and that is your finished pattern tile. Before we export this though, we want to test to make sure the pattern is fully seamless. So we're going to swipe down with 3 fingers and copy all. Then come up to a very top layer here, swipe down again and tap paste. And then we can drag this up and snap it to the middle there, and you'll see 1800 pixels. Then underneath we can add a layer and fill it with a dark or contrasting colour. Then if there's any gaps in the pattern, that dark will show through as a contrast against this lighter background. So we can duplicate this, tap transform, snap it over to there, and then just pan up and down this seam and make sure that all your motifs match up and that you've got no dark line going down there. And you can pinch and merge those together, duplicate, snap it to the bottom, and then just check this middle seam. Make sure that there's no line there and that all of these motifs match up. And once that's okay, we can pinch those 2 together. And that is our pattern in repeat. I really hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial, and if you have a go at making this pattern and share it on Cara, then don't forget to tag me at bekkiflaherty so I can see it. You can find the pattern maker canvas in my Etsy store. The one we used here is the Boho Brights, and the stamp brushes and palette are free over in the Pattern Makers Toolkit. If you're a Pattern Makers Toolkit member, you get 10% off everything in my Etsy store. The Pattern Makers Toolkit is kind of like a Patreon group, except it's free. You get access to all the resources in the Pattern Makers Toolkit on my website, including those I make for my Skillshare classes, early access to some of my YouTube tutorials and drawing prompts, discounts in my Etsy store, and 1 new freebie exclusively via email every month. And I only send out 1 email per month, I promise. If you want to see more pattern tutorials like this every week, then don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you next time.